What up, friends? Your boy Robin Black, home studio here in Toronto. Stack of records lets me keep the mic up just at the right height. This is Water, the study of martial arts, and this has been a lot of fun to do, just to float out ideas. We've talked about Chinese martial arts. We've talked about changes in MMA. We've talked about the guard. We've talked about many different aspects of martial arts. And this one, if you've been following, I am working on developing, or us together are working on developing a podcast with Dan Hardy. And the early discussions are to do it when Brendan Schaub will be involved. Maybe not in the podcast, maybe some weeks, but in his network of sharing the podcast. So that's in process. This may be the one that transfers over to there, or some variation of this, a discussion of the martial arts, its technique, history, philosophies, how it changes and grows, and big picture and small picture. This may be or at least an offshoot of this may be how we end up developing that with Dan. Still in progress. If it, for some reason something changes, it doesn't happen, please forgive me. But it is in progress. Today is going to be slightly different, and I just want to throw it out at the top. One of our most precious, valuable resource today is time. You know, you can earn more money. You can't earn more time. So I want to talk today a little bit about how martial arts is viewed, how it's shared, how its ideas are spread, philosophical views and connections to martial arts. So I'm going to talk a little less today about a long fist style of Kung Fu and how Tony Ferguson uses that. Or I'm going to talk a little bit less today about distance or timing or the guard or those things, and a little more philosophically. So if that's not your bag, just wanted to give you fair warning. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Singapore. I was just there. And what I learned from travel, how you travel helps you see the world differently. Seeing the world differently helps you understand change. You know, if you order a taco in Mexico or Singapore or Toronto, and they're slightly different, they're all still tacos. You can suddenly see it's like, of course, a left hook is different in Amsterdam than it is in Cleveland. You know, how somebody expresses boxing or kickboxing or what they call their martial art even. Somebody calls this Chinese boxing. Somebody else calls it Muay Thai. This kick is a front kick, a front snap kick in Taekwondo, but it's a front kick in karate, but it's a teep or, you know, a snapping push kick, or it has no name in certain ways. All of those things. So travel helps you with that perspective. So I just wanted to give you the overview at the top. I want to thank you if you're listening to this on audio. It's something we want to do a lot more of. Thank you for hanging in there with us. So let me start with Singapore, how and why I was there. So Singapore is this beautiful country, I think a little bit misunderstood. Some people connect it to China somehow, what's that? Or to bubblegum, you know, or Singapore slings, which they do make mostly for tourists. I don't think anyone from Singapore actually drinks Singapore slings. But it's a city-state. It's at the bottom of Malaysia. And it was once a British colony. It was once part of Malay. But it is 5.5 million people that live in a city on a tiny island that is its own country. And they are very successful. It is a very successful nation. Now, I'll try to make sense of the connection of this to martial arts later. But what I'm thinking of as I'm trying to connect these dots is Singapore in 2017 is incredibly successful. It really is. Crime is minimal. Unemployment sits around 2%. They teach mindfulness, meditation, and empathy in school to 9-year-old kids. And its success was shaped from decisions that were made in the 60s and 70s. smart choices that we're committed to make it successful today. Now, I'm going to try to make that connection with you right now about we're training to compete. We are martial artists who decide that we're going to compete in mixed martial arts or kickboxing or some other competition. I'm sorry, I mowed the lawn and I've been itchy. So if you notice that I'm scratching. But if we want to win, we don't figure out how to win, and we're young and we need some growth. We don't plan how to win Friday, or we don't plan how to win in 6 weeks, or we don't plan what's the best strategy to be able to beat John Jones at the end of the year. If you were 19 years old and you had to fight Demetrius Johnson, you don't figure out how to beat him now. You figure out what it would take to beat him, knowing what he could become in 5 years. And is there a way for us to strategize to create the fighter that would defeat the fighter that he will be? I know that sounds like a stretch, but that is what we'd have to do. We're not just going to go beat them. There are truths in the world. Chances are we may not beat them anyways. And chances are we may not get there because by investing in our future, we might have to not be as good in the short term. This is life. This is life. You know, give up a bit of money in the short term to be successful in the long term. Give up a little bit of flash in the short term to be successful in the long term. Patience, developing, big picture, macro, all of these things, they're all connected they're philosophically connected. You want to beat Demetrius Johnson at 26 years old? Well, figure out what he'll be 6 years from now and what it will take to beat him, and then reverse engineer it back to what it'll take to train, to jump those points to be good at that thing. And that's how you would do it. And that's what Singapore did. Singapore now, like I said, 2% unemployment rate, almost no crime, happiness quotient through the roof, massively successful economy, almost no traffic in a city of 5.5 million. All of these things were strategized for years. So you look back and you're trying to figure out how somebody one day beat John Jones or Demetrius Johnson. You'd have to look back 5 and 6 years to see the choices that they made to go down paths that would give them success by taking that path. And that path had to be chosen years ago. Singapore's path was teach English. So realizing it had no natural resources of any kind. It was once a powerful trading port. And because of changes and military changes and economic changes, geographical rerouting, it became less and less important. So you're like, okay, we're not going to win just as a wrestler. How could we become something else 6 years from now? Well, we have to work hard at things that we're bad at and invest in them in hopes that eventually we'll be great at them. So they decided to invest in their people, and they invested in education, and they invested in growing a better, happier, more adjusted, more successful population. So everybody was told and taught English as the main language for anything science related, anything economic related, anything math related, so that by the time that crop of children were 20, they spoke English in such a way that you could attract foreign investment. And it was things like this. And we're also going to teach mindfulness. We're going to teach empathy. And we're going to teach our kids. We're not going to help them become qualified to do jobs. We're going to help them become educated, so that if they're educated, they may accomplish things. They may be able to improve in many ways, right? So do we want to teach somebody to become qualified? So you have passed all the necessary criteria to become a purple belt. Or do we want to teach somebody to be educated, that your belt doesn't really matter. There are many ways. Let's make you a better learner. Let's make you a better healer. Let's make you a better goal setter. If we do that for you as a martial artist, in the long run, you will be more successful. And that was the route Singapore took. And over time, they became very successful. And so why was I in Singapore? I was there to meet with One Championship, who is who thinks exactly the same way. What are the long-term foundational choices that we can make that will build this? And their goal also isn't just to build this company. Their goal is to build it in a way that's positively connected to the communities, not for their own purpose, for the greater good. And if you positively connect to Kuala Lumpur, and you positively connect to Malaysia, and you positively connect to all of these countries, and you help them grow, and you help their people grow, and you inspire the youth, all of a sudden your company grows on a much stronger thing. And I'm not meaning to shit talk Bellator or the UFC or the West or any of these things, but today, a lot of the ones that we do watch here are, how do we make the biggest thing possible fast? How do we make the most conflict? How do we get the most news? How do we get everybody buzzed? How do we make this happen as fast as possible? Okay, we did it. Whew, that was good. We got to do it again. The long-term, slow growth goal is to educate the people, is to build a deeper connection, is to build a deeper understanding to it. And one other thing that is really, really fascinating, and it'll sound weird, you might argue it, or maybe it doesn't sound weird. Maybe I shouldn't, in fact, I shouldn't project that on you. But people connect much more deeply to positive things than to negative things. This is true. It doesn't take, you don't have to Google very many things. You don't have to do much scientific research to see that there's a deeper, long-term connection to positive things than there are negative things. Negative things burn fast and hot, and stay in line with that idea of make it happen, let's get it, sell the thing, how many pay-per-view hits, whatever. That's a short-term philosophy. It's hard to keep going, but as long as you keep growing, you can do it. And we see a lot of that in what we see day to day. But in the long run, you build deeper connection. You build an army of connected, positive people, and this grows. And so one championship, I was there, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And it's worth $1 billion. They reach 1.7 billion people, and they're not reaching them in a disposable relationship. They're connecting to them. This is, when we study martial arts, we're studying ways to live. We're studying ways to be a person, to fight, to train, to grow, to do business, to be a father. That's why we're studying martial arts. At least it's a big reason. And even if it isn't why, it's an offshoot of it. It's a benefit. It's what it does for your life. And so that's what we're seeing here. You can study anything like a martial art. You can study the way someone does business, the choices that they make. Is it war or is it peace? Is it to beat somebody else, or is it to work together? You see it. You see it in all things. We did a Fighting is About Fighting yesterday, probably came out, depending when you're watching this. Could be months ago, I don't know. But it's one back on the YouTube channel here. And when we recorded it, I just seen Joe Rogan, who invited me to sit and chat with him, and it was wonderful. That guy's brilliant. But we were talking about these things. We were talking about growth, and we were talking about finding philosophical things within a fight. And I brought up something. Actually, I mentioned this in Fighting is About Fighting. It's the same book. I mentioned this book, Focus. And the author is Goleman, Daniel Goleman, Goleman. And as you develop different focus, you can become something called a first-class noticer. Very valuable in business, very valuable in life, very valuable as you can start to see the world this way for the next chapters of your life or your family's life. What you do is you start to understand systems. You start to see systems and how they connect and how they work together, and the streams of growth in this affects growth in that, and harm in this affects harm in that. And these people are very valuable in business. They're very valuable in business because if I can see, the years ahead and how the streams of change will affect the years ahead for my business, well, that's very valuable. But it's so connected to martial arts because if you want, whether by the time you're watching this, Till has been able to beat Wonder Boy, or like many who came before him, he couldn't. The next guy to be able to do that will have to plan ahead. How will Wonder Boy change, and how will the understanding change, and how will our knowledge of him change, and what skills would be necessary to beat that guy? And could I build them in 2 years of hard work? So that changing of streams and connecting of systems. And as it relates to one championship, they're seeing that as they connect these allies and inspire these people. And kids who come up and saw Ang Lang Sang or Angela Lee or these people inspire them, become successful members of society with a deep connection to one championship. These are all real truths. And anyway, so I realized that this episode, unlike some of the others where water has been one of the segments that we've done that's been most appreciated and talked about, and I've received the most direct messages about people's appreciation, this one is a little less focused. But to be honest with you, I'm a little less focused. You know, I was over there, I was 24 hours of travel over there and then there for 5 days and then saw this beautiful show and immersed in this completely different culture and surrounded by different people and one, you know, that see the world differently and interact with each other differently. And then I flew back 24 hours and was home for only a day and I had to go to LA for some work. And while I was there, I saw Rogan and shared some ideas with him and then came back 24 hours and now sitting down with Mark to try to share these ideas. So, of course, it's a little fragmented. But that doesn't mean it's not worth sharing. And I hope it's given you something to explore. I'm definitely going to come back to another episode of this to try to connect these ideas a little deeper. The idea of seeing different systems and understanding how they connect and relate in ways that shape the next Darren Till. Or if Darren, by the time you watch this, or you know, in the next day or so, if Darren beats Wonder Boy, he will have done it with this understanding of the connecting of the systems of Wonder Boy's in and out system and Wonder Boy's legs to hands and Wonder Boy's feints and all of Wonder Boy's offensive and defensive systems. Darren will have, whether consciously or subconsciously, understood how they all blend and how to take advantage of them. So that idea is something we're going to explore much deeper. Also, as I mentioned, Singapore, why is it so incredibly successful in 2018? Things they decided in the 60s or 70s. They invested in the long term of their people. And stuck with it. That's a good point. And stuck with it. It's a really fucking good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah. You know, for sure. We're 14 months into this and into doing this YouTube channel and the connected things. And depending on your perspective, there are people who, wow, so much is happening for you guys. And you know, there's people sharing things and, you know, we'll get 500,000 views of a 1-minute breakdown on social media, which connects back to these long forms of things. And people are listening on all these different audio platforms and people would say, wow, you know, look what you've done. And then somebody else will literally see us sitting in a room like this and go, God, it must be tough. You know, it's all perspective. But what if it took us 2 more years to get to a point where we had the freedom to be able to multiply our ideas, our reach, everything by 10? Not have to worry about, you know, if this light bulb goes out, how much does it cost? Because that was 2 years ago. What if it took 2 years? What if it took you 2 years to do that? It took fucking Singapore 50 years. Although, to be fair, it was 7% economic growth or more every year for them. Doesn't sound like a lot. 7%. If you make $1,000 a year, you now make $1,070. It is a lot. Over 48 years? 7% a year? It's a lot. Can you invest that? Like, can you invest that time in there? And that's a great point. Stick with it.
How many years did it
Yeah.
take for Dana White and the
Yeah.
UFC pop?
Yeah.
They were on the brink of
Yeah.
getting
When the UFC popped, they were on the brink of, you know, nearing their end. But were they? Because if it didn't pop, then there's a couple more conversations. Like, give it another year. We can give it another year. We can do it. You know, that's what it takes. That's fucking what it takes. You know, I don't know if you've watched Gary Vaynerchuk ever. Most people have been exposed to him now. Some people are like, yeah, I've seen thousands of his videos. Others are like, I think I've heard of him. But that's the nature of our world. He's massively consumed and shared ideas guy. And his stuff is about attention. But it's really the same thing. A lot of the stuff that we have some connection to him because his creative staff has given us some time and some influence and directed us with some ideas because he was generous enough to do that, offer that. But again, that's an example of somebody, he sticks with it and he practices what he preaches. Give. He gave us that. He gave it to us. And his whole staff has that philosophy. Once they have that, now you see the massive growth. One championship over in Singapore, everybody's on board that this is an art form, that this is about inspiring nations, that this is about finding the good. It's about growth. It's about trial. It's about success and failure and trying again. And it's about excellence. And it's about teamwork. And it's about giving back to the community. That's real. And when and they have 100 staff now. Now you have 100 people working that way. And they inspired me. Now you have a guy sitting here talking about that. And now a few thousand of you will see this, and a few hundred of you will say, I want to know about what they're about. And you'll be inspired by that.
When you talk about trial, look at the way they approach weight cutting. Now everyone's talking about
So you can't, and so Mark, I don't know if you can hear him. He mentioned, they made an improvement in weight management. And we'll talk about that on a separate day. But go take a peek. Nobody can fix this weight cutting problem. Really? One championship fixed it. You can fix things. You can accomplish things. It's not easy. It takes work. It takes effort. It takes commitment. But you can do these things. And I learned a lot over there. I learned a lot. And all of these ideas will connect a little more deeply to martial arts, and we'll find the right examples, and we'll find the right ways. And if you follow some of my 1-minute breakdowns on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Robin Black MMA. Recently, I've started to just find the philosophical lesson. So I'm not just saying this right hand landed because he stepped over here and he saw this and that did that. But, just finding the connection to how life connects to that he expected this to happen. And because he expected it and anticipated it, I caught him. Well, our expectations cause us problems in real life. If you go home and you're expecting your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever to be excited and have done all these nice things for you, and now you're mad, all they did was live their life, and they were busy, and some other shit happened to them, and they wish they could have done that for you, but they didn't. And they didn't do anything wrong, but you're mad. You're mad because you had expectations, unreasonable ones that had nothing to do with them. That's one of thousands of examples. You expect your boss to thank you, and he doesn't. He just lived his life. He wasn't being mean to you. This just didn't happen. His fucking mom is sick. It just didn't happen. But your expectation that it should happen, now you're mad. And you see that connection. The expectation that the right hand is coming is what caused it. Your expectation caused your pain. There's one. And I had another one recently as somebody was snapped into a tie clinch. The reaction is pop the elbow, block the hip, get on the inside. These are the reactions I need. Sometimes don't react. Bink. Chose not to react. Didn't react. If you had reacted to any of those, that knockout would have never come. By making the conscious choice to, rather than react to the immediate thing, see the other option. There's two, right? We're finding them. And there's more all the time. I'm starting to see it that way, different systems. And I think that trip to Singapore has helped push that a little bit, seeing how one worked. Whether I end up doing direct work for them, I'll be honored to do it. But we have a busy life and with many things going on in the world, and we'll be allies no matter how that works out. But also seeing that, but also seeing Singapore itself and how it is adapted and changed. Very inspiring. And now we'll try to connect some of these moments that happen within fighting to these philosophies. And that'll be where we'll going ahead. So I hope you enjoyed this 20, 30 minutes of exploring these ideas. Water, the study of martial arts, has tended to be a little more connected to technique and how it's expressed and how, but I hope you found some value in this one. I really enjoyed it anyways. We'll be back. There'll be another one or two things coming out on the YouTube channel in the next week. My wife's show at Stratford, Ontario, and the festival itself is opening up soon, so I'll be away for a few days, but I think hopefully there's another one or two things in the next day or two coming out. So thank you so much for hanging. Really. If you want, this is from Evolve. I was in Shanghai, but if you want hot lava, enjoy the hostilities, or flim flam, go to shoprobinblack.com. Thanks. Blackout.